Hi, I'm Mrs. Hilton. In our last lesson, we looked at different ways to support a claim using evidence when we're writing an argumentative essay. Today, we will look at how to develop an outline as we prepare to write an argumentative essay and how this can help us organize our thoughts. You'll want a piece of paper and a pencil to write with. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about organizing an argumentative essay. An argumentative essay is a type of essay that presents an argument. It usually supports one side while pointing out the flaws in the other side of an argument. The general structure of an argumentative essay follows the same format as a lot of essays do. It begins with an introduction and then is followed by a body that supports the author's claim that was made in the introduction. Sometimes it also includes a counter argument and it ends with a strong conclusion. After this lesson today, students will be able to use an introduction to clearly state a claim. They'll be able to use body paragraphs to support the claim, and then they'll be able to restate the claim clearly in a concluding paragraph. Today we will work on how is an argumentative essay structured. We'll look at outlining an essay. We'll practice identifying the structure of an essay, and we'll write an outline and an essay together. Does an argumentative essay look different than a descriptive or research essay? Think about essays you've written in the past. Maybe you've written a 5-paragraph essay. Maybe your teacher has assigned one that's just doesn't have a limit or a specific number of paragraphs. Think about how it's organized. Okay, when we organize an argumentative essay, it might look the same in structure as other essays do, but an argumentative essay always includes a claim or an opinion of the author. It begins with an introduction. This paragraph introduces your topic and gives background information and presents your point of view or your claim. The second portion of your essay is the body paragraphs. These paragraphs should include your key arguments or one reason and the evidence that supports it. There might be more than just one of these paragraphs. So even though this next part says third, your conclusion might be farther away than your third paragraph. In the conclusion, this paragraph rephrases your claim and summarizes the evidence or main points that you made. Introductions and conclusions may seem similar since authors restate the claim in both. It can help to keep one of those broad and descriptive and then have one be more concise with specific details. Let's look at how we would write an introduction. First, we introduce our topic. You want to do this in a way that will interest your reader. There are many different approaches to grabbing your reader's attention. You can quote an expert on the subject, you can use curious facts or statistics, or you can construct a vivid situation to draw the reader in. For instance, instead of saying college is unnecessary, you could say there are people who have never gone to college who are doing better financially than those with a degree. This statement is simple, but it draws the reader in by making them want to learn more. Then present your point of view in a way that's clear and easy for your reader to understand. Your audience should know exactly what you're going to debate and why. Making the statement that fracking should be banned is weak. A solid statement would be something like, while some people say fracking is a very effective method to extract natural gas, experts insist it's quite dangerous and hazardous to the environment. Next, you provide reasons that you feel your statement is correct. Each of these reasons will be explained or elaborated on in their own body paragraph later. Last, you need to transition to the body part of your essay. Remember to use transitions as you move from one paragraph to another. For instance, if you were writing a paragraph about school uniforms, you might end the first paragraph by saying, wearing a school uniform blends students together, promoting equality. And then you could begin your next paragraph with a statement about school uniforms, providing students with an environment that is free from bullying. When we write body paragraphs, every body paragraph should have a single focus. This would be a reason your claim is correct. Your facts and evidence should reflect that. Use transitions as you move to your next paragraph. Aim for 3 body paragraphs when you outline your paper. but proofread and check how your paper flows together. It may be necessary to use fewer or more paragraphs than that. If you're making a counter argument, it usually occurs in the body paragraphs. As you choose what reasons to support your claim, you can also decide which order to use them in your essay. Will you begin with a counter argument and then list benefits to your claim? Or will you start with data and then quote an expert? Typically, authors start with the weakest evidence first, then they use a counter argument, and then they finish the body paragraphs up with their strongest evidence. When you make your conclusion, a good conclusion to an argumentative essay will summarize everything that has been said, but not add any new ideas. Ideally, after reading your essay, your audience should get some food for thought, or they should consider researching the topic further. The conclusion is a good place to appeal to the reader's feelings with a personal experience or emotional plea. When we're making our final point, we want to remember, summarize your main arguments, suggest solutions, restate why your position is correct. If you're going to use a personal experience, here's a good place to do it. Remember, your purpose is to persuade your reader to agree with you. In addition to checking for spelling and grammar errors, you want to remember to reread your essay objectively. Asking the following questions can help you check and make sure there's no holes in your information. Did I state the argument and topic sentences clearly enough? Will it be easy for the readers to follow my writing flow, or will they be confused? Have I chosen the appropriate wording and structure for my essay? Have I provided enough evidence to support my argument? How likely are the readers to be convinced of my point of view? In this portion here, when you proofread and rewrite, is a good time to have someone else reread your essay also if you have time. Someone who doesn't know as much about your subject is a great person to have proofread for you, because they will be able to tell you if there's missing information and they can't understand what you're saying. Let's read this essay together. As we cover each section, make an outline of the author's thoughts, including the claim, the introduction, the claims that they're making, the reasons for those claims, and what you see in the conclusion. We'll go over these as we read each slide. Malaria prevention costs less than treatment. Malaria is an infectious disease caused by parasites that are transmitted to people through mosquitoes. Each year, over 500 million people will become infected with malaria, with roughly 80% of them living in sub-Saharan Africa. Nearly 500,000 people die of malaria every year, most of them young children under the age of 5. Unlike many other infectious diseases, the death toll from malaria is rising. While there have been many programs designed to improve access to malaria treatment, the best way to reduce the impact of malaria in sub-Saharan Africa is to focus on reducing the number of people who contract the disease in the first place, rather than waiting to treat the disease after a person is already infected. We can tell that this introduction follows the outline that I gave you earlier. It begins by giving the reader information about what malaria is and how many people it affects each year. It also tells the reader that the death toll is rising. This creates urgency. The last sentence states the author's claim. Reducing the numbers of people getting malaria is easier and less expensive than treating them after they get the disease. Did you find any reasons that this might be true? Can you see any of the reasons the author is going to use in supporting paragraphs, or did they omit that from the introduction? Because that's also another good thing to include. There are multiple drugs available to treat malaria, and many of them work well and save lives. But malaria eradication programs that focus on getting rid of malaria, focus too much on these treatments and not enough on prevention. The World Health Organization's Global Malaria Eradication Program proved this. This program started in 1955 and had a goal of eliminating malaria in Africa within 10 years. Based upon previously successful programs in Brazil and the United States, The program focused mainly on vector control. Vector control involves using chemicals like chloroquine and DDT. More than $1 billion was spent trying to abolish malaria using this method. In 1969, when the program ended, the number of people in sub-Saharan Africa who contracted malaria or who had died from having it actually increased 10% during this time. What do you think the author is trying to state here? Is this a reason that supports their claim, or is it a counter-argument? This body paragraph introduces the counter-argument. The author is going to use this information to show why prevention is more effective in a specific way. He's going to show the expense that was used in trying to get rid of the mosquitoes versus other ways people can prevent malaria. More evidence will be given in the next few slides. One of the major reasons for the failure of the project was that it didn't consider significant differences between Brazil and sub-Saharan Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa has neither the money nor the infrastructure to support such an elaborate program, and it couldn't be run the way it was meant to. Most African countries don't have the resources to send all their people to doctors and get shots, nor can they afford to clear wetlands or other malaria-prone areas. The continent's spending per person for eradicating malaria was just a quarter of what Brazil spent. Sub-Saharan Africa simply can't rely on a plan that requires more money, infrastructure, and expertise than they have to spare. Additionally, because chloroquine was used widely but inconsistently, mosquitoes developed resistance, and chloroquine is now nearly completely ineffective in sub-Saharan Africa, with over 95% of mosquitoes resistant to it. As a result, newer, more expensive drugs need to be used to prevent and treat malaria, which further drives up the cost of malaria treatment for a region that can ill afford it. In these paragraphs, the author continues to give evidence using the counter-argument that supports his claim. He points out why shots are ineffective because people can't make it to the doctor. He also points out that mosquitoes have become resistant to one of the best poisons to get rid of them. This is a good use of a counterclaim. Instead of developing plans to treat malaria after the infection has occurred, programs should focus on preventing infection from occurring in the first place. Not only is this plan cheaper and more effective, reducing the number of people who contract malaria also reduces loss of work and school days, which can further bring down the productivity of the region. One of the cheapest and most effective ways to do this is to implement insecticide-treated bed nets, or ITNs. These nets provide a protective barrier around the person or people using them. While untreated bed nets are still helpful, those treated with insecticides are much more useful because they stop mosquitoes from biting people through the nets, and they help reduce mosquito populations in a community, thus helping people who don't even own bed nets. Bed nets are also very effective because most mosquito bites occur while the person is sleeping, so bed nets would be able to drastically reduce the number of transmissions during the night. In fact, transmission of malaria can be reduced by as much as 90% in areas where the use of ITNs is widespread. Take a moment to pause the video and see if you can identify some of the evidence the author uses here to support one of the best ways to eradicate malaria. We can see here in this first paragraph, he introduces his reasoning. He's going to show that by preventing people from getting mosquito bites by using these nets, that number one, they don't have to spend the money to treat them for malaria, and number two, they don't lose time at work or school that also costs them money. In the second paragraph, you can see lots of facts that the author gives to support this. He talks about how bed nets prevent mosquito bites from happening when most people get them at night. He also talks about how the treated nets kill part of the mosquito population, so it reduces the chance of people getting malaria even if they don't have mosquito nets because other people are using them. He ends the paragraph with this fact. In fact, transmission of malaria can be reduced by as much as 90% in areas where the use of insecticide-treated bed nets is widespread. That's pretty effective treatment. Here we can see the conclusion to this essay. The author says, money is so scarce in sub-Saharan Africa, the low cost is a great benefit and a major reason why this program is so successful. Bed nets cost about $2 US to make. They last several years and can protect 2 adults. Studies have shown that for every 500 nets being used, 1 less child dies of malaria. With an estimated 300 million people in Africa not being protected by mosquito nets, there's the potential to save 3 million lives by spending just a few dollars per person. In this conclusion, the author restates his claim by showing how cost-effective net prevention is than the other strategies that were given. This essay begins with the claim that malaria eradication plans should focus on prevention rather than treatment. In the body paragraphs, the author begins with the counter-argument and shows the reasons are less effective than prevention. In the second half of the body, he focuses on the success of using nets for prevention. In your outline where you took notes, it might have looked something like this. The introduction gives information about what malaria is and ends with a thesis statement about an effective treatment. A thesis statement is another way we can say the claim the author is making. You'll see that as you continue to write in the upper grades. Okay, we can see that the body paragraphs explain 2 specific points. First, the counter argument is presented, and it shows why medicine and pesticides were ineffective and the reasons why. One of the reasons they were ineffective was because of the expense. Second, he shows the effective alternative and the evidence for why it is better. It is more cost-effective and has farther-reaching results. Last, the conclusion restates the claim and summarizes the evidence used to show why the claim is correct. Is this how you would have organized the information in this essay? Do you think that the author used enough facts to support his position? Where do you think he could improve? Let's talk a little bit about proofreading and some things that the author could do to improve. Did you think of any ideas about what you would have done differently in this essay? Number 1, the author makes a case for using expanding bed net over waiting until malaria occurs and beginning treatment, but not much of a plan is given for how the bed nets would be distributed or how to ensure they're being used properly. By going into detail of what he believes should be done, the author would be making a stronger statement. Second, we can see the introduction of the essay does a good job of laying out the seriousness of the problem, but the conclusion is short and abrupt. Expanding it into its own paragraph and giving more details would give the author a final way to convince readers of her side of the argument. Okay, now that we've analyzed how an argumentative essay is organized, let's practice outlining one. In order to outline our thoughts, let's look at the prompt. Write an argumentative essay choosing either year-round school or traditional summer break. So in year-round school, you get about 2 weeks off every 45 days. Okay, so you'd go to school for 45 days and then you'd have 2 weeks off and then you'd come right back. Go ahead and pause the video and think about whether or not your opinion is that year-round school is better or having a longer, more traditional summer break is better. You can write down some ideas for what you think you could, what information you think you could use to support your opinion. So for your introduction, you could ask the question, should summer be 15 days or 2.5 months? For some points you could use in your body paragraphs, you could use a counter argument that year-round school means smarter students. You could argue that building costs are more, and you could talk about the benefits of traditional summer. In your conclusion, you can restate the claim and summarize the evidence. Let's go ahead and look at some ways we might outline this. For this introduction, we can use a personal experience from being at school. Pause the video and think about how it feels to get to the end of a school year. Are you excited for summer break? How would you feel if it was just 2 weeks? Let's go ahead and look at this already written introduction. The final bell rings. It's the last day of school and summer has finally come. Students don't have to think about school for at least another 2.5 months. That is the way it should always be. School should continue using the traditional calendar and not a year-round schedule. There are numerous downsides to year-round schooling. It has no positive effects on education, it adds to costs, and it disrupts the long-awaited summer vacation. Can you identify the author's claim in this paragraph? What about the reasons they used to justify it? As you can see here in pink, we read, schools should continue using the traditional calendar and not a year-round schedule. This is the author's claim. Do you think it's clearly stated? Can you understand what she's saying? In the last sentence, we can see the 3 points she's going to make underlined. No positive effects on education, adds to cost, and disrupts summer vacation. So we should see in the following body paragraphs, one paragraph that elaborates on each of these points. By organizing your thoughts like this, it keeps your essay really easy to read and helps your reader be able to better understand the points you're trying to make. For body paragraph 1, we can claim that there's no academic benefit to year-round school. Okay, so most people would state that year-round school is beneficial to students and it helps them be smarter. So the author can use this as a counter argument here. Do you think that that is effective? Let's go ahead and read a sample paragraph that this body paragraph might look like in this essay. Contrary to the well-accepted belief, year-round schooling has no constructive impact on education. Most year-round schedules use the 45-15 method, 45 days of school followed by 15 days off. Because of this, there are many first and last days of school. All those transitions disrupt the learning process. Also, there is no evidence of higher test scores. Due to that, many schools that change to the year-round schedules end up switching back. For example, since 1980, 95% of schools that tried the year-round schedule changed back to a traditional calendar. It is obvious that changing to year-round schooling does not help students. Therefore, why is the change necessary? Do you think this is the best point for the author to start with? Is the counter argument the best place to start? We can look at different evidence as we see, and later on when we proofread, we can always decide to move this paragraph to a different spot, okay? What else could you use here as your introductory paragraph, stating one of the reasons why year-round school is not the best option? The last thing I want you to consider as we look at this paragraph specifically is that the author ended it with a question. Do you think that that's effective with the point they're trying to make? We can see some facts here in this paragraph about the length of time students are in school and then out of school during year-round. There's some data there that says since 1980, 95% of schools that tried the year-round schedule changed back to a traditional calendar. So that's some good information that supports this reason, but it doesn't give us a lot of detail about it. Let's go ahead and look at body paragraph 2. Before we begin this, I want you to think of some benefits of closing the building that you go to school in for a longer portion of the year all at once. What kind of facts do you think you could use if you wanted to use this as evidence for this part of your essay? Let's look at this sample paragraph that could be written about this reason. Like any other facility, keeping a school open requires a great deal of money. When a school changes to a year-round schedule, the costs skyrocket. Keeping school open in the middle of summer requires air conditioning, and that adds significantly to the school's expenses. The usual utility bills grow because of the additional open school time. Finally, teachers must be paid for all the weeks they are working. With all these factors, the cost of keeping schools open becomes immensely high. For example, a high school in Arizona had a cost increase of $157,000 when they switched to year-round schooling. Some schools may not be able to handle such increases, and other schools that can handle these expenses could be doing better things with the money. Is year-round school really where the money should go? Do you think enough evidence was given to make this a strong point? What other information could be added? Do you think that can you think of something that the author might have missed, or maybe some misinformation that the author used? If we look at some of the data that the author gave, we can see that the idea that utility bills might be higher because of having to use air conditioning if you're going through school in the summer might be true in areas like Arizona, but some other places that might not matter as much. In fact, it might be better for them if they weren't in school when it's so cold in the wintertime. What about where the author states that teachers would have to be paid more? Do you really think that you'd be in school more days during year-round school, or does that not really make sense? Again, I want you to notice that this paragraph ended with a question. Do you think this is an effective way to write your essay? Let's look at the next body paragraph. Here in paragraph 3, the author is going to make the point that traditional summer is better for students. Before we look at the sample that's written, I want you to think of some reasons you think traditional summer is best, or does it not matter to you? Do you think maybe you feel differently since this year you got out of school at spring break? Let's look at what the author has to say. An important part of a child's life is summertime. With year-round school schedules, students would hardly have any time to relax. During the 15-day breaks, they would be thinking about their quick return to school. It would also be difficult to coordinate family vacations with parents' work schedules. Similarly, children would not be able to go to most summer camps. One expert, Dr. Peter Scales, says, "The biggest plus of camp is that camps help young people discover and explore their talents, interests, and values. Most schools don't satisfy all these needs. Kids who have these kinds of camp experiences end up being healthier and have fewer problems. Obviously, the summer is crucial to a child's learning and development. Why should this invaluable part of a young person's life be taken away?" Here we see the final reason the author has given for supporting traditional summer. She used evidence of why she believes this schedule is best for students. We can see that she used a quote from a doctor talking about summer camp and its importance and its effect on development. That's probably some pretty good research. She also talks about how 15 days, starting and stopping school over and over again, might add to students' anxiety. Another thing that we see in this paragraph is that it would be difficult to coordinate family vacations. I think that's probably the weakest evidence that's used in this paragraph. Again, we see that this paragraph is ended with a question. So each of the 3 body paragraphs has ended with a question. Do you think that helps keep the essay consistent, or do you think it's a bad idea to end those paragraphs with a question? Let's go ahead and think about the conclusion. We want to remember again that a good conclusion summarizes the essay. We also want to remember that it is a good place to appeal to readers' emotions. What do you think are some ways you could do this in talking about in this essay? What emotions could you appeal to for people about the end of school? Let's read this sample. It is evident that year-round schooling is not the best option for the school calendar. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the traditional school year. Why change something that works so well? The final bell rings. Let's make sure this bell means that the real summer vacation has come. Does this conclusion appeal to the reader's feelings? Do you agree with the author? Were they able to change your opinion if you felt differently before this essay, or do you disagree with them after hearing their reasons? We need to remember that the purpose of an argumentative essay is to persuade your reader to agree with you. Okay, so we can see in this essay that there were some consistent things. I think one thing that could probably be added to the conclusion here is that more of the points could be restated. Maybe the questions from the end of each body paragraph could have been used, and maybe an answer could have been given. Let's go ahead and review the outline we can use to write an argumentative essay. First, we write an introduction. This paragraph introduces your topic, gives background information, and presents your point of view or claim. You want to hook your readers here. Second is your body paragraphs. These paragraphs should include your key arguments or one reason and the evidence that supports it. Remember to use transitions as you move from one reason to the next. You might need more than one paragraph, like in the Malaria essay, or you might be able to do one paragraph for each reason. So here we see third, but it's not necessarily the third paragraph in your essay, which is the conclusion. This paragraph rephrases your claim and summarizes your evidence or main points. Remember, it should also appeal to your readers' feelings. Thanks for staying for this lesson. Do you have any questions? If you do, remember you can use the links in the learning guide to help with understanding or to continue working on this lesson. Have a great school year.